Okay, we're back with Darin Meyers, and Darin is the local franchisee of TAB CSRA. And in a past podcast segment, we had talked about, well, teamwork shortage can create labor shortage. If you don't have good teamwork, you may not have enough people to help you. But I know there are some solutions that you preach and teach.
Well, yeah, and I think they're very, very important. I certainly think you need to make sure you have the right vision. Take the time to have the vision right. In some cases, if you're changing your vision, you may want to get your employees involved so they feel some ownership on that vision. But regardless of how the vision was created, it's important that the employees understand the direction and the vision and the values of the company. I think that's very important. Secondly, then I think the business owner certainly needs to maximize the team capabilities and competence. And I think that starts a little bit with the hiring process. I think you need to make sure you're hiring employees that will fit the vision. Not only benefits the business, but it also benefits the employee. So in other words, you're trying to establish the right fit right out of the gate. You know, one of the things I try to remind people is there's no guarantees that you get that right fit, but you spend the appropriate amount of time to maximize your chances for the future employee and the business that you do have the right fit. I think sometimes we get desperate and we maybe hastily make a decision on an employee hire. And I always say no hire is better than a bad hire. I think that's because at the end of the day, if you've had a bad hire, it's error carried forward, and you're going to spend an inordinate amount of time trying to fix something that maybe could have been prevented up front. So I think Nick Saban, I know I'm in Georgia territory here, but Nick Saban beats most of the nation year over years because his recruiting and his hiring on his football team. And I think the correlation to business is very strong, that you got to make sure that you're getting the right players. So to me, once you got your vision, you try to hire and get the team competence set up where it can support that vision. So once you've got the right team hired, I think it's important that you appropriately train and develop and maximize that team's capabilities.
So, Darin, you mentioned vision. As an employer, how do you connect your employee to the vision?
Well, one, I think you got to communicate it, and not just communicate it, explain, elaborate, get into the details, ask questions, get answers, make sure there's alignment. I think, vision statements can be well written, but if people below in the organization don't understand it, I think largely it's all for naught.
Yeah.
I think you need to make sure you get a good vision and value statement, but I think more importantly then is you need to make sure the organization is aligned to that.
Right.
And so you got to, I think, communicate often, explain, get excited about it, make it important. The leader has the responsibility of you get what you inspect and make important. And I think that you really need to, the team needs to understand how important that vision is and the approach. And it certainly starts, as we mentioned earlier, about hiring to people. I think you need to make sure that you try to hire as well as establish your organization chart to the strengths and weaknesses of the candidates and the employees, and making sure that you have the right fit.
So what to do then for an employer? I mean, you've heard of all these bonuses. I remember we've done some stories about just mills in the area offering $3,500 either sign-on or retention bonuses.
Right.
Is it money that's going to help cut it?
Well, I can't sit here and say money would help me a little bit, and I think money would always be a consideration. Wage benefits are going to be a play in everything, I think, to some extent. What I'm trying to emphasize in this podcast is, aside from those, it's your teamwork and your culture, don't underestimate how important that is. You can pay a great employee phenomenal benefits and a phenomenal wage, and if they're dissatisfied because of the culture, the teamwork, or the engagement, and having a retention problem, bring in the next employee and pay them a little bit more than the other employee, you're going to go through that cycle. So I think it's extremely valuable to establish just a strong team, because everybody wants to be a part of a good team.
Yeah. And lastly, talk about the bond through this pandemic of people who've been allowed and trusted to work virtually, and the viewpoint of the employer and how they work together.
Yeah, I may have a few people that differ with me on this and disagree, but I think here's what I worry about with this post-pandemic and flexible work schedules and working from home and remotely. First of all, I'm all for it. I'm not against that. But the point is, I don't think it's one size fits all, and I don't think it will always work for every organization. But here's what I do worry about. For those businesses that have transitioned pre-pandemic, where they had an office where everyone was there together, let's assume for years, had established relationships, had established bonds, and then were asked to work remotely, I think those bonds and relationships previously established will allow that remote work environment to be successful. But I don't necessarily think you should take that for granted and assume that always leaves, because what I worry about is over the years, the transition has worked, and I'm going to say partly because previous relationships and teamwork and culture had already been established. The business owner or the leaders take their eye off the ball because the transition of working remotely is successful. Then I believe you're going to have attrition, retirements, and slowly over time, those bonds and relationships will be broken just due to people moving on, things changing. And what I worry about is business owners forget to monitor and recognize, is the teamwork, the culture staying the same as we migrate, or is it slowly degrading as people move on? And I'm afraid people could take their eye off the ball. And I'm not saying that means you got to come and bring them back to work. I think each business is going to have to make what's right for them. But I am making the point that just because the initial transition remotely worked great, I think it's going to be incumbent upon the business owner to really stay engaged over time to make sure that teamwork and that culture stays strong and healthy. Because I think if unmonitored and as people change out, I definitely think it could degrade.
He's Darin Meyers, again, runs a peer-to-peer advisory board, TAB, the alternative board, and tabcsra.com. Happy holidays.
Well, to you as well. I think the last time we talked at the podcast, we were going to go play tennis and have a little tennis match.
It's getting a little frosty for that, though.
I think you're hiding from me. I don't think you're wanting to play.
I'll bet you some giblet gravy. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.